Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Prime Minister Modi is in the US wrapping up a packed visit featuring the Quad Summit, bilateral meetings with the leaders of the US, Nepal and Kuwait, also the President of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas. Modi's meeting with him was a statement as India urges Israel to cease fire in Gaza. No meeting with Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, discussions on drones and semiconductors. Tonight we'll bring you all the highlights from this visit and look at what this visit by the Indian Prime Minister means for India-US ties. In Sri Lanka, Anura Kumara Dissanayake, or AKD, has won the presidential election. Who is he and what does his win mean for India? In West Asia, Israel and Lebanon are firing missiles at each other. The Hezbollah chief is calling it a new phase of war. The ceasefire in Gaza looks even more unlikely. In Pakistan, terror attack on diplomats of 12 countries. In India, politics over the Tirupati Prasad. We'll do a fact check for you tonight. Would you pay 3.5 lakh rupees to attend a Coldplay concert? We'll look at how ticket prices are shooting through the roof. Is the discount on your shopping real or fake? An Australian watchdog sues 2 supermarket chains for illusory discounts. And how India is ruling the chess global order with a gold at the Olympiad. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. The US-China trade war set to escalate. Washington wants to ban the sale of vehicles using Chinese and Russian technology. The Biden administration cites national security risks. The move would effectively ban Chinese vehicles from the American market. Vehicles assembled in the US but using Chinese parts will also be impacted. Japan protests airspace violation by Russia. A Russian patrol plane entered its airspace thrice. Tokyo raises the issue with Moscow. Japan's military responded by scrambling its fighter jets and issuing radio warnings. This is the first confirmed incursion since 2019. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in the US. Zelensky will be meeting President Biden on Thursday to present what he calls his victory plan. It is a proposal on how to end the 2.5 years of war with Russia. Zelensky will also be meeting US presidential hopefuls Kamala Harris and Donald Trump later this week. In India, the Supreme Court delivers a landmark judgment on child pornography, ruling that downloading and watching it is an offence. This overrules the order passed by the Madras High Court, which said that merely downloading and watching child pornography was not an offence. The Supreme Court called the High Court's judgment an egregious error. And Albania plans to establish a sovereign Muslim microstate within its borders. It will be run by a Sufi sect. The Vatican-like enclave will be within Albania's capital, Tirana. It will serve as the political home for the country's 4th largest religious community. In a world suffering 2 wars and multiple armed conflicts, where does the Quad figure? It's an anti-China group that has evolved in fits and starts, often shy of stating its purpose and being dismissed as a talk shop. But tonight we want to begin the show with the latest Quad summit, because while world leaders try to solve today's problems, they must keep an eye on tomorrow's threat, and that is, beyond doubt, China. So the strategy to counter it must be worked upon, and that's what happened over this weekend. After much back and forth, the Quad summit finally took place. India was supposed to host this one, but it ended up switching turns with the US. Quad leaders met on Saturday in Delaware, which is Joe Biden's hometown, and this was his farewell meeting. Like I said, through the years, the Quad has struggled to define itself and its purpose. It has 4 members, the US, Australia, Japan and India. They came together to contain China, but they don't like to say it openly, especially when they're speaking to the press. Although behind closed doors, it's a different story. China tops the agenda. You don't have to take our word for it. Listen to this.
China continues to behave aggressively, testing us all across the region. And it's true in the South China Sea, the East China Sea, South Asia, and the Taiwan Straits.
As I'm sure you can tell, that was Joe Biden's voice. He was speaking to his Quad counterparts. Biden's statement got leaked. It was a hot mic moment. Journalists at the summit picked up this audio. They were inside the summit hall for the opening remarks, and just as they were about to leave, Joe Biden started talking. He did not realize that the media persons could still hear him. So China was the first item on the summit's agenda, as the US president said it himself. It dominated the joint statement too. As always, the statement doesn't name China, but it clearly targets it. The Quad is addressing Beijing's aggression directly. The joint statement highlights China's acts of aggression, specifically at two flashpoints, the East and the South China Sea. The Quad expressed concerns over the militarization of islands and the PLA's intimidation tactics, like the dangerous use of Coast Guard. Chinese ships keep ramming into Philippine vessels, and they keep engaging in dangerous maneuvers. Again, the Quad avoided any direct mention, but the language makes it fairly obvious. It's a condemnation of China's actions.
The security and environment surrounding ourselves has become increasingly severe, and a free international order based on the rule of law is under threat. Under this backdrop, it is ever more important for us, the Quad, to shared values such as freedom and democracy, to continue to demonstrate our firm commitment to our common vision of a free Indo-Pacific to the international community.
We've heard similar statements before, but here is what's different this time. The Quad is rolling out a series of moves aimed at keeping China in check, specifically on the high seas.
We're announcing a series of initiatives to deliver real, positive impact for the Indo-Pacific that includes providing new maritime technologies to our regional partners so they know what's happening in their waters, launching cooperation between coast guards for the first time.
The first focus area is protecting the coast. The Quad will undertake joint operations. All 4 members will be involved in this. These operations will take place in the Indo-Pacific. First, the US would host the Coast Guards from Australia, Japan and India. They'll train together on an American Coast Guard vessel. They'll also monitor the waters in the Indo-Pacific. Subsequently, every member will get to play host. Basically, the Quad is doing more joint operations to improve interoperability and to ensure maritime safety. The Quad is also expanding an existing pact, the Indo-Pacific Partnership for Maritime Domain Awareness. I know it sounds complicated, but it's quite straightforward, really. This pact is to monitor the waters across the Indo-Pacific, track the region in real time. And the Quad is now expanding this agreement. Member countries will hold workshops, teach their personnel how to monitor and secure the waters, how to enforce rules and deter unlawful behavior. Under this plan, India will host the first Quad workshop next year. And that's not all. The group is looking to counter China in multiple ways, like imposing tariffs on some imports, cracking down on e-commerce shipments, and strengthening checks on the dumping of steel and aluminium. These are some forward-looking ideas. There are some forward-looking ideas too, like the Quad Ports of the Future Partnership. Ports of the Future Partnership. Like the name suggests, it will focus on shipping ports. The group wants to mobilize investments towards ports through both government financing and the private sector. The Quad says that it wants to promote, and I'm quoting, sustainable and resilient port infrastructure development. This could directly challenge Chinese investments and China's existing projects in the region, like the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka and the Gwadar port in Pakistan. It's an ambitious goal, but it all hinges on the execution, and on that front, the Quad is yet to spell out its plans. How will they do it? Having said that, this year's summit could be a turning point. It could reshape this alliance because finally, the Quad seems to be shedding its hesitation over China. It is taking bold and ambitious steps to contain Chinese expansionism. And it's trying to prove that it's more than an anti-China grouping. This time, they've announced what they're calling the Quad Cancer Moonshot, a new initiative to fight cancer, where Quad countries will pool their resources to prevent, detect, treat and alleviate cancer. They'll first focus on cervical cancer here, specifically cervical cancer vaccines. And India is making a big contribution towards this.
क्वाड मूनशॉट इनिशिएटिव के तहत $7.5 मिलियन के सैपलिंग किट्स, डिटेक्शन किट्स और वैक्सीन का सहयोग देने की घोषणा करता हूं। रेडियोथेरेपी ट्रीटमेंट और कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग में भी भारत सहयोग देगा।
The Quad also wants to work together on biotechnology and quantum computing. These are all small steps, but they give the Quad more heft. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the alliance is evolving.
Unlike some international forums, the Quad it doesn't have a long history. That means it's not defined by tradition, but it also means it's not confined by it. It means that as it develops, it can evolve. And that is, I believe, what is happening.
Joe Biden himself would be pleased with this outcome. It was his last Quad summit, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. Biden made a few goof-ups too. Take a look at this.
Distinguished guests, the President of the United States.
Hello, hello, hello. By the way, that little thing up in the air there, thank you all for being here. And now, who am I introducing next? Who's next?
Distinguished guests, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India.
By the way, he's from a small country like ours, with low population, but he's become a good and decent man and a good friend.
Thank you.
Quad, will it survive regardless of the outcome?
भारत माता की।
It's a packed trip for the Prime Minister, diaspora, diplomacy, drones. You name it, he's done it. We just showed you the pictures from New York. That was Prime Minister Modi's diaspora event. Around 15,000 Indian Americans attended it. Some great pictures for sure. But this trip goes beyond images and symbolism, and it comes at a very important time. A, it's election season in America. Joe Biden will be out by early next year. Either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump will replace him. And B, India-US ties are going through a rough patch, mainly because of Khalistan. The US has accused India of plotting to murder a Khalistani separatist. His name is Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, and he lives in the US. Now, India has denied this allegation, but it has certainly left a bad taste. So the Prime Minister has a complicated job in America. Navigate the divided US polity, smooth out the differences, and build on the gains of the last 10 years. The question is, has he succeeded? Well, let's look at what he's packed in this trip. First up was a meeting with Joe Biden. Not in Washington, though. The meeting was at Biden's home in Delaware. Modi and Biden discussed a number of issues like space cooperation, semiconductors, the global south, and killer drones. They emphasized on two key issues. One was building a chip plant in Kolkata. The US Space Force will set up this facility, this chip plant in Kolkata. It will be India's first national security chip fabrication plant. What does that mean? It means that the plant will produce chips for the military, both Indian and American. That's one. Secondly, they discussed drones. India is buying 31 Predator drones from the US. Both Biden and Modi reaffirmed their support for this deal. They also promised to expand defense cooperation. Now, this was part of Modi's mission, part one of his mission, in fact, government-to-government cooperation. Part two was the private sector. American investments will be crucial for India's economy, especially when it comes to AI and chips. So Prime Minister Modi met a group of 15 tech CEOs on Sunday. You had Google CEO Sundar Pichai, Nvidia's Jensen Huang, and the CEOs of Adobe, AMD, and IBM. These tech companies are looking to diversify their production lines. So Prime Minister Modi said, "Come to India." He says India will become a credible and reliable player in the chip race.
जिस गति से दुनिया में एक विषय चला उसमें हम लेट हैं, लेकिन हम एक बार शुरू करते हैं तो हमारी गति भी उतनी तेज होती है। अब जैसे 5G में हम लेट थे, लेकिन आज हम नंबर 1 पर है, तो ये भारत की अपनी एक विशेषता भी है। भारत के पास ग्लोबल सेमीकंडक्टर इकोसिस्टम सप्लाई चेन में एक रिलायबल और क्रेडिबल पार्टनर बनने की पूरी क्षमता है।
That's government to government cooperation done and private cooperation done. So finally, Prime Minister Modi turned to the diaspora. Yes, these events are good politics, but they're also good diplomacy. Modi has pitched Indian Americans as a sort of a bridge, a link between India and the US. So he used the New York event to frame this bilateral relationship. He called it a force for global good.
भारत और अमेरिका की पार्टनरशिप लगातार मजबूत हो रही है। हमारी पार्टनरशिप ग्लोबल गुड के लिए है। दुनिया के लिए AI का मतलब है आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, लेकिन मैं मानता हूं कि AI का मतलब है अमेरिकन इंडियन।
Prime Minister Modi has also stayed away from US politics. Trump said that the Indian Prime Minister would meet him. So far, that meeting has not happened. The Prime Minister hasn't met Trump or Kamala Harris, which is very different from the last time. You may remember in 2019, Modi held a massive event with Trump in Texas, the Howdy Modi event, and that too in the middle of campaigning. There was some pushback against the optics of that event. So this time, Prime Minister Modi has steered clear. It tells you how this relationship has also grown and how mature it has become. The visit also follows Modi's trips to Ukraine and Russia. He met both Zelensky and Putin. He also called for peace. That was a clear display of India's strategic autonomy. But autonomy does not mean isolation. India is very much keen on building ties with all countries, all its partners. And in that group, the US is a strategic priority, an area of focus. That's the biggest takeaway from this trip, really. The maturity and resilience of this relationship, which wasn't the case before. There was a lot of trust deficit between the two sides, so even small issues could derail progress. Maybe not anymore. The Khalistan case may remain a thorn, but it's not affecting the wider cooperation. Modi and Biden still discussed national security priorities like semiconductors, defense products, supply chains. The focus is not on a myopic, China-centric partnership. It's on a long-term symbiotic relationship. In the last 10 years, Prime Minister Modi has invested a lot in these ties. This is his 9th US visit as Prime Minister of India, and it doesn't look like his focus will change in the 3rd term. There was one more thing that happened over the weekend. During the meeting between Prime Minister Modi and US President Biden, Biden led Modi through a room full of antiques from India. This was priceless Indian heritage that had been smuggled into the US. Biden was returning them. The US is returning 297 Indian artifacts. 297. They come from all parts of India. And they span almost 4,000 years. Some of the oldest ones are from about 2000 BC. These simple copper figures and this harpoon, they're from northern India. Then you have these terracotta figures from between 100 BC to 100 AD. Most of them are from eastern India. Almost 300 artifacts are being returned. You have everything from pottery to statues, metal figures to ivory items, and they come from every part of India. It is quite the haul. Prime Minister Modi was grateful for their return, and he called it a strengthening of the fight against illicit trafficking. These artifacts came from multiple sources in the US. Some of them are from the Met, that's the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. An investigation found that about 77 exhibits at the Met were linked to an antique smuggler, a man named Subhash Kapoor. When the Met was informed about this connection, the museum decided to return some of the artifacts. So that's one source. Another is the New York Attorney General's office. They have confiscated hundreds of smuggled Indian artifacts, again involving the same man, Subhash Kapoor. Kapoor was arrested a few years ago. He's in prison in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu, but he's also wanted in the US. American authorities have recovered about 2,500 items linked to his smuggling ring. And they're lying in the New York Attorney General's office. They periodically return some to India. New Delhi and Washington have been working together on this for years to try and stop the smuggling of Indian artifacts. A few months ago, the two countries also signed a pact called the Cultural Property Agreement. It simplifies the process of returning stolen goods, making their return easier. But even before the agreement, the US had been stepping up. They returned 10 artifacts in 2016, 157 in 2021, and 105 last June. And these returns coincided with Prime Minister Modi's visits to the US. This time is no different. Overall, the US has returned 578 Indian artifacts since 2016, by far the most by any country. Over the last decade, India has recovered about 640 artifacts, 640 overall, from all across the world. So the US has helped with about 90% of these recoveries. Then you have Australia, which returned about 40 Indian artifacts. And there's also Britain, which returned a whopping 16 artifacts. That's right, 16. On the one hand, you have the US returning close to 600 antiques, and then there's the UK doing everything it can to keep looted heritage. There's, of course, the British Museum, the most well-known hoard of stolen artifacts in the world. But that isn't the only stash of stolen Indian antiques. You also have other massive collections, like the hoard in the Powys Castle in Wales. These are things stolen by Robert Clive, the first British governor in India. So basically another famous antique smuggler. His family looted more than 1,000 artifacts from India. We know this. And we know where they're stashed. You would think that London would hang its head in shame and just give them back. But it's the British. If they start doing that, all their museums will be left empty. For now, perhaps India should just be happy with the return of the latest American batch, and people should go and see these artifacts in museums or wherever they're displayed. If Indians show interest, it will build pressure. And hopefully someday we can get all of our stolen heritage back.
මාගේ උපරිම ශක්ති ප්‍රමාණයෙන් ශ්‍රී ලංකා ප්‍රජාතාන්ත්‍රික සමාජවාදී ජනරජයේ ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ දේශීය තුල වෙනම රජයක් පිහිටවීමට කෙලින්ම හෝ අන්‍යාකාරයෙන් ශ්‍රී ලංකාව තුලදී හෝ දේශනා කිරීම නොකරන බවද ගෞරව බහුමාන්‍ය යුක්තව ප්‍රකාශ කොට තිබෙනවා.
Anurag Kumara Dissanayake. He's the new president of Sri Lanka. But most Sri Lankans don't call him that. For supporters and critics, he is AKD. And he's got many labels: Marxist, left-leaning, ethno-nationalist, anti-India. I could go on and on. But tonight, we're looking at the leader underneath the labels. Who is AKD? What are his policies? How will they affect Sri Lanka? And is his win a setback for India? First, the results. AKD won 42% of the votes in the first round. At second place was Sajith Premadasa, who won 32% of the votes. And third was Ranil Wickremesinghe with 17%. Since no one crossed the 50% mark, a second round of counting was done. For the first time in Sri Lanka's history, they had never had a second round before this one. And this time, the second choice votes were counted. Basically, voters can state their first, second and third preferences. Most don't do it. But this time, those second preference votes were the game changers. That's how AKD won. He was sworn in today in Colombo. He admitted that he cannot magically fix the economy, but he promised to do everything he can.
We are inheriting a nation in a deep crisis. This crisis cannot be overcome by a government, a political party, or an individual alone. I am not a conjurer or a magician. I am a common citizen. I have strengths and limitations, things I know and things I don't. However, my priority is to identify capabilities, acquire the knowledge I lack, and make informed decisions to lead this country.
AKD isn't your typical Sri Lankan leader. He's not a political dynast. His father was not a president or prime minister. He grew up in central rural Sri Lanka. In college, he was introduced to Marxism, and that's when he joined the JVP, the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, a leftist party in Sri Lanka. It split away from the country's Communist Party. Now, the JVP has a violent past. They tried to topple the Sri Lankan government twice, once in 1971 and then again in 1987. Both times there was a bloodbath. It led to the death of nearly 80,000 people. Of course, AKD wasn't around then. He joined a different JVP, one that was transitioning from violence to democracy. He became a member of parliament in the year 2000. He began leading the JVP in 2014. He contested the presidential election for the first time in 2019. The JVP has mostly remained on the fringes, but the 2022 debt crisis boosted them. Sri Lankans rejected the so-called mainstream politicians. They were fed up with corruption, mismanagement and dynastic politics, and that's what AKD tapped into. He pitched himself as a political outsider. He did not use Marxist tropes of class struggles. Instead, he talked about corruption and taxes, things that ordinary people would understand and relate with. And clearly the strategy worked. But his challenge is not over yet. AKD must form a functioning government. He must appoint ministers from the parliament. Just one problem though. His party has just 3 MPs, including him. So how can AKD form a government? Well, he's expected to call for a snap parliamentary election. Until then, he can appoint a caretaker cabinet. So expect back-to-back elections in Sri Lanka. Now we come to the policy. AKD is a 21st century Marxist. He supports foreign trade and investments. In fact, he spoke about it today. He said Sri Lanka cannot live in isolation.
Our country needs international support. Regardless of the power divisions in the world, we intend to work with other nations to benefit our country. We are not a nation that should be isolated, but one that must move forward collectively with others.
Nonetheless, questions remain, especially on the IMF bailout. Sri Lanka negotiated a $2.9 billion deal in 2023. As part of it, some austerity measures have been introduced, like higher taxes and lower subsidies. AKD says that he will renegotiate this deal. As president, he can tweak some parts of it, but that could delay the bailout funds. And a lot of experts are worried about that. If the new president is not careful, he could derail the current progress. Which brings us to the geopolitics. India and China were keenly watching this election. Ideologically, AKD is close to China, plus his party has an anti-India past. They opposed India's peacekeeping deployments in Sri Lanka, even targeted Indian troops and businesses. Does AKD share that animosity? Well, not publicly. After his victory, the Indian High Commissioner met AKD. He was the first foreign diplomat to do so. Prime Minister Modi also congratulated him. He said Sri Lanka has a special place in India's policy. AKD thanked Modi for his wishes. He promised to strengthen India-Sri Lanka ties too. Well, China also congratulated him. President Xi Jinping apparently sent a message to the new president. The question is, should India be worried about him? It's no secret that AKD was not India's favorite. New Delhi would have liked Vikramasinghe back or Premadasa to win, but it was prepared for all scenarios. In February, New Delhi hosted AKD. Both Foreign Minister Jaishankar and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval met him, sort of like an icebreaker. NSA Doval also travelled to Colombo last month. Again, he met AKD. So this result isn't a surprise for New Delhi. Not like the Maldives or Bangladesh. This time, India was prepared for it. As for the policies, it's a waiting game. No one really knows what AKD's foreign policy will look like. Consider the Chinese spy ship voyages. As a leftist, will he see them as imperialistic moves? Or will he give a fellow leftist country a pass? These are questions only time will answer. Now to West Asia, where tensions are rising. The region is on the brink of a wider war, and this morning things escalated further. Israel struck southern Lebanon with missiles. It attacked 300 Hezbollah targets, killed at least 270 people and injured another 1,000. The death toll is only a preliminary count, so it is likely to rise. It is the deadliest day of Israeli strikes in Lebanon since the year 2006. People in Lebanon are fleeing the south. Schools have been closed and the locals do not know what to expect. Meanwhile, Beirut is calling this a genocide.
The continuing Israeli aggression on Lebanon is a war of extermination in every sense of the word, and a destructive plan aimed at destroying Lebanese villages and towns and eliminating green areas.
This morning, most Lebanese citizens received a text. It was from Israel asking them to evacuate. This is the first time Israel has sent a message like this, so it took people aback, including the country's information minister. His office too received this message, but he's dismissed it since. Lebanon is calling it psychological warfare.
For those who have not yet understood, I want to clarify Israel's policy. We do not wait for a threat. We anticipate it, anywhere, in any arena, at any time. We eliminate senior officials, we eliminate terrorists, we eliminate missiles, and there's more to come. Whoever tries to hurt us, we hurt them even more. I promised that we would change the security balance, the balance of power in the north. That is exactly what we are doing.
You heard the Israeli Prime Minister. He wants to change the balance of power in the north, and this is how Israel is doing it. Their first goal was to reduce the threat from Hezbollah, and Israel did it with the pager explosions followed by the missile strikes. Then comes the second goal, pushing Hezbollah back. Israel wants the group out of the border area. And the final goal is to destroy their infrastructure, especially what they've been able to build near the border, the Hezbollah infrastructure. So the message is loud and clear. Israel wants to destroy Hezbollah, and nothing seems to be deterring them, not even the United States. Washington has been calling for de-escalation, urging for a diplomatic solution.
Are you worried about rising tensions in the Middle East?
Yes, I am, but we're going to do everything we can to keep a wider war from breaking out. And we're still pushing hard. Thank you.
The U.S. doesn't want a wider war, but at this point, it's not really up to them to decide. Israel is going to do what it wants to do. What about the Hezbollah? What are they doing? The past week was a deadly one for this group. Their communication network was destroyed, their elite leadership was decimated, but their ability to strike back has not been crushed yet. On Sunday, Hezbollah fired more than 115 rockets into Israel. Most of them were intercepted, but the Israeli defense system missed a few. These rockets landed near Haifa, a city in northern Israel.
We heard siren, we ran to the bomb shelter, and then we heard a huge noise, and we thought in the beginning that it hit our house.
I feel more afraid, I don't know what happened tomorrow, after tomorrow, this life.
So Israel is striking Lebanon. Hezbollah is trying to hit back. The world wants them to de-escalate, and residents fear that a war could break out any minute. None of this is new. Since October 7th, Israel and Hezbollah have traded fire almost daily. They've been pushed to the brink multiple times, but they seem to have an unwritten rule: avoid a full-blown conflict. That doesn't appear to be the case this time. All bets are off. This isn't just another escalation. This looks like war. And the Hezbollah leader agrees. That's Hassan Nasrallah. He calls it, and I'm quoting, a new phase of the war. We don't know where this ends. Meanwhile, in Gaza, it's a different story. For months, diplomatic efforts have been underway to broker a ceasefire, but that could be in jeopardy. Reports suggest that Israel doesn't want a ceasefire. In fact, Prime Minister Netanyahu has another grand plan. He wants to force all Palestinians out of northern Gaza. Why? To starve the Hamas and force the release of Israeli hostages. This weekend, Israel also raided Al Jazeera's office in the West Bank. It's been closed for now. Remember, Al Jazeera is a state-owned Qatari media outlet. Israel says it supported terrorist activities. The network has rejected this. So this is another front that Israel is fighting on, and it has its hands full. We're just days away from the first anniversary of the Gaza war. The world was hoping for a breather, a ceasefire deal that could bring peace. Instead, it's looking worse. Our next story is from Pakistan. There was an attack on a diplomatic convoy yesterday. It took place in the Swat Valley in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Diplomats from 12 countries were touring the area. They had been invited by the local administration to showcase Swat's industries and to promote the region as a tourist destination. But terror has been rife in the Swat Valley. Reports say that information about the diplomatic visit was leaked and terrorists attacked the convoy as it was leaving a ski resort in the area. One police officer was killed, 4 others were injured. Here's our report.
On Sunday, another terror attack took place in Pakistan. The attack targeted a diplomatic convoy. Ambassadors from 12 countries were touring the Swat Valley. The ambassadors were from Russia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Portugal, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Iran, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Zimbabwe, Indonesia and Vietnam. They've been invited by the Swat Chamber of Commerce and Industries. The body wanted to promote some of Swat's specialties, like handicrafts and gemstones, and tourism. The Swat Valley is home to a hill station and a ski resort called Malam Jabba. The diplomats were taken there, but on their way back, they were attacked. An improvised explosive device, or IED, was placed on the road. It exploded as the first vehicle in the convoy was passing by. It was a police escort vehicle. The passengers were injured, 4 police officers and the driver. They were rushed to a nearby hospital, but one officer succumbed to his injuries. The diplomats managed to escape unharmed. They were later escorted back to Pakistan's capital, Islamabad. An investigation is underway. Pakistan is trying to determine whether a security breach led to the attack, because the convoy's route was not public knowledge. But meanwhile, the politics over the incident has begun. Pakistan's Prime Minister and President have condemned the attack and sent their condolences. The governor of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is blaming the provincial administration. It's the usual response: politics over practical solutions. The fact of the matter is, no one seems to be working towards fixing things. The Swat Valley is a terror hotbed. It has constantly been targeted by various groups, like the Gul Bahadur Group, Lashkar-e-Islam, Islamic State, Khorasan, and the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. That's the Pakistani Taliban, or TTP. The TTP has reportedly denied any involvement in the convoy bombing, and no other group has taken responsibility for the attack yet either. But terror is a constant menace in the region, both in the Swat Valley and the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province overall. Over 100 police officers and about the same number of civilians have been killed in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa since the beginning of this year. This includes 5 Chinese nationals who were killed in a suicide bombing in March. But before addressing this deep-rooted problem, the Swat officials want to try and promote the region, bring in more foreigners, tourists from at least 12 countries. That is why the diplomats were invited, to help promote Swat as a tourist hotspot. Yesterday's attack probably wasn't the publicity they were looking for, but it's a grim reminder of reality in Pakistan.
A new type of politics is playing out in India, Prasad politics. I'm sure you've read about it or heard about it. It's unfolding at one of India's most famous temples, Tirupati in Andhra Pradesh. The temple has a special sweet offering, or Prasad. It's a type of laddu. It is first offered to the deity and then it's distributed to the devotees. So it's a very important part of the Tirupati pilgrimage. But the Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister says the laddu has been defiled. How? Well, the temple uses ghee to make laddus, and the Chief Minister says this ghee was adulterated, that it had traces of animal fat. And he's blaming this on the previous Chief Minister, that's Jagan Mohan Reddy. The current Chief Minister is Chandrababu Naidu. He is a coalition partner of Prime Minister Modi at the centre. Naidu says that Jagan's government defiled the Tirupati laddu, and his party has shown a lab test as proof. And since then, it's become a major controversy. Well, you can see why. Tirupati is a very important temple in India, also one of the richest in the world. Reports say the temple is worth 3 lakh crore rupees. 3 lakh crore rupees. That's around 36 billion US dollars. And the laddus? Around 300,000 are distributed every single day. They make around 500 crores in sales. That's $60 million daily. But forget the money and sales. This issue is about religious beliefs. Did the previous Andhra government violate them? Well, Jagan Reddy says no. He's written a letter to Prime Minister Modi. He says Chandrababu Naidu is lying. I know you must have read a lot of theories about this story. I know many of you must be angry too. So tonight we are bringing you the facts. First of all, was animal fat used to make laddus in Tirupati? The answer is no, and we are not the ones saying it. The temple authorities themselves are. The ghee in question was delivered by a Tamil Nadu dairy. They shipped 10 containers to Tirupati. Four of these containers were rejected by the temple. Why? Because they failed the quality test. Afterwards, these failed samples were sent to a lab, and that lab report is now going viral. So let me repeat, the adulterated ghee was not used to make the laddus. It was rejected by the temple. Which brings us to the second question. Was Jagan Mohan Reddy involved? Well, only a proper investigation can confirm that. But we will say this. Things are not as simple as they seem. Jagan's government did give out a contract to this supplier. But these ghee samples, these ghee shipments were delivered in the month of July when Jagan Reddy was not Chief Minister. Chandrababu Naidu had taken over. So it's too early to start assigning blame. Which brings us to the final question. Is there a political angle to this? Again, we cannot be sure. Chandrababu Naidu has used religion in the past to attack Jagan Reddy. You see, Jagan Mohan Reddy is a Christian. Naidu has accused him of targeting Hindus in Andhra, even promoting forceful conversions. In 2021, he called Jagan a Christian CM. Could this Laddu claim be an extension of that politics? I know there's no point speculating about it. So let's look at the path forward. The Andhra government has set up a special probe team. Hopefully, they can offer some closure. Meanwhile, the Tirupati temple has been sanitized. A 4-hour purification ritual was done this morning. The temple says it will ward off the ill effects. Now, if you think about it, this controversy is about one thing, and that is trust. Can devotees trust governments to uphold their beliefs? That's the bedrock of Indian secularism. We do not separate the state from temples or churches like in the West. Here, the state plays an active role in religion, and that role is based on trust. So it's important that politicians preserve that, whether it's by upholding beliefs or ensuring the purity of rituals. The same also applies to misleading or weaponizing devotees. It's a tactic that erodes public trust. Let's see who broke that trust in Andhra Pradesh. Nobody said it would be easy. Nobody said it would be this hard. These Coldplay lyrics have never rung more true. Yesterday was D-Day for Coldplay fans in India. The band is performing in Mumbai next year, and the tickets went on sale. 13 million people logged in to buy the tickets, 13 million. But most were just stuck in the queue. Those who did not get a ticket then turned to resellers, and guess what they found? A markup of 60 to 100 times. Tickets worth 3,500 rupees, 3,500 rupees, were selling for more than 3 lakh rupees. Yes, we don't need somebody with superhuman gifts. We just need somebody with Coldplay tickets. Our next report tells you why concerts are getting more and more expensive and why buying tickets is so difficult.
It wasn't a typical Sunday for Coldplay fans here in India. Armed with multiple devices, fingers poised over keyboards, credit cards clutched like golden tickets, WhatsApp groups buzzing with updates, and a constant chorus of, "Is it live yet?" Fans prepared for an adventure of a lifetime. After all, Coldplay was finally returning to India. It was the stuff of dreams, except it soon turned into a nightmare for millions. The sale was supposed to go live at 12 p.m, but the moment the clock hit 12, thousands were logged out. They couldn't access the Book My Show app. When they finally could, they were added to a long queue, a queue of millions. 13 million people logged in to buy tickets. Only a handful of them managed to snag them. The tickets were sold out in the blink of an eye. But soon came some divine intervention, another extra show. Coldplay are performing in Mumbai on the 18th and 19th of January. They added another concert on the 21st, so fans had hope again. But even this act of mercy brought fresh agony. People complained of inconsistencies. They were assigned random numbers in the queue. Soon, those tickets ran out too. So what did the fans do? They turned to the black market, to ticket resellers, but nothing could fix their despair. A ticket originally priced at Rs 3,500 is selling at Rs 350,000. That's a 100-time markup. And this isn't just the story of Coldplay, it's the story of concerts across the globe. They are getting more and more expensive. Ticket prices across the globe are up by 23% this year. In some countries, it's as expensive as taking a vacation. And there are many reasons for this. First, the cost to hold a concert after the pandemic has gone up. There's rising transport costs. Freight costs are high. Stage equipment is more expensive. And with more and more concerts, most of that equipment is booked, which further hikes the prices. Then there's those who travel for concerts. The cost of flight tickets are rising, and so is the accommodation cost. Hotel prices have doubled in the last 5 years. So all in all, it's an expensive endeavor. But imagine you're ready to shell out money for all of this. Then comes the real dilemma. The price of acquiring the tickets. You see, concert tickets for any venue are limited. For bigger bands and stars, they're sold out within minutes. Most loyal fans don't get their hands on them. This is where second-party platforms come into play. These ticket resellers sell the tickets for a much higher price. The more the demand, the higher the cost. Be it Taylor Swift, Beyoncé, Coldplay, or even Oasis, high prices are the new normal for concerts. And it's a lesson for fans. No matter how much you plan, no matter how many devices you use, or how many people you recruit to help you in your cause, when it comes to buying tickets, you're at the mercy of the virtual queue gods. So you can try and try, but you may not succeed.
Prices dropped, mega shopping bonanza, super ultimate sale extravaganza. The wordy the better. If you're out shopping, you can't miss the signs. They're everywhere in big, bold, and most likely red. They're online as well, flooding your inbox, attacking you with Instagram ads. You see, retailers are desperate to attract customers, so they offer huge discounts. But these markdowns are more a trick than a treat. And today, Australia knows this best. Their consumer watchdog has sued two companies, Coles and Woolworths. These are supermarket chains, the country's two biggest chains in fact. Together they ring up 2/3 of Australia's grocery sales. For years they have promoted products with deals, apparently selling them at discounted prices. But according to the watchdog, the discounts were illusory.
We allege that Woolworths and Coles offered the products at regular long-term prices for 6 months or more, then increased the price for a short period before placing the products on the Woolworths prices dropped promotion or the Coles down promotion at prices higher than or the same as the prior regular price.
There is a term for this. It is called deceptive pricing. Here's how it works. A product is priced at 80 rupees. The company jacks up the price to 100, then starts selling it again at 80, and it tells you that it's a 20% discount when in fact it's not. Let me give you an example. This is an Oreo family pack sold on the Woolworths shelves. For months it was priced at $3.5. That was the regular price, $3.5. Then suddenly, for a few days, they increased the price to $5. Then they decreased it to $4.5. But this time, the $4.5 was promoted as a sale price. Shoppers were told that this was a discount. Well, technically it was, but only from the hiked $5 price. It was actually 29% higher than the regular price of $3.5. Deceptive pricing is a successful tactic. Consumers find it exciting to land a good deal, and retailers take advantage of this by tricking them into believing that they are getting a better price and making profits off them. Coles and Woolworths allegedly did this with millions of products.
We're seeking a significant penalty. This is serious conduct that is of great concern to us that affected many consumers with millions of products sold subject to this practice.
If this is found to be true, it's completely unacceptable. This is not the Australian spirit. Customers don't deserve to be treated as fools by the supermarkets. They deserve much, much better than that.
Customers do deserve better, and not just in Australia, everywhere. Because let me state the obvious, deceptive pricing is not only morally and ethically wrong, it is also illegal in most countries, yet it is everywhere. And research proves this. In the UK, only 1 in 20 Black Friday discounts are genuine, 1 in 20. In the US, more than half the products sold by major retailers are offered at false discounts. The world over, 51% consumers say that they face phony discounts regularly, 51%, most commonly in the UK, followed by Mexico, Sweden, Spain, the US and India. It is daylight robbery. So what can we do about it? Well, there is a legal route, but it's not an easy one. While many countries have laws against fake discounts, consumers have to build their own case and prove harm. This is both difficult and inconvenient. So governments, if you're listening, we need better guardrails. We need preventive measures. Speaking of which, here's the second tip. Tracking and comparing prices. Some websites have item price history, so you can track fluctuations over a period of time, and others have price matching tools where you can compare the pricing. So this is the gist of the matter. It's not hard to find deals these days. The real challenge is knowing if they are real. So the next time you shop, do remember that you can't count on the discount. India has arrived as a chess nation. Our chess masters have created history. They have clinched a double gold at the Chess Olympiad in Budapest. This is a worldwide chess event and India has won in both men's and women's categories. In addition, the team also walked away with 4 individual gold medals. This is an unbelievable feat. And it wouldn't have been possible without India's golden generation, the young crop that is taking over at the top of world chess. Our next report tells you more.
Come on! 3, India, 2, 1, India!
Now that's how you celebrate a historic win. India has won a double gold at the 45th International Chess Federation or the FIDE Chess Olympiad in Hungary's Budapest. Of the 188 teams, India won both the men's and women's competitions in addition to winning the team championships. India also walked away with 4 individual gold medals, with D. Gukesh, Arjun Erigesi, Divya Deshmukh and Vantika Agarwal claiming individual honours. The men's team was formidable, winning all their rounds. Meanwhile, the women's team managed to cross the line, sealing the gold in the last round. This happened despite the absence of Koneru Hampi. She's India's top-ranked women's player. She chose to sit out the Olympiad, and despite this, the team still won gold. For both the teams, this was one of the most dominant performances in the history of chess. This is the first time that India won the men's and women's draws at the Olympiads. This is the 3rd time that a country has bagged the double gold at the same tournament. The previous 2 being China and the Soviet Union, who have long been considered chess powerhouses. But the history scripting does not end here. For the first time ever, 2 Indians are in the top 5 chess live ratings, 18-year-old D. Gukesh and 21-year-old Arjun Erigesi. Gukesh is aiming to win the world crown in November this year. While success there is not guaranteed, right now people everywhere are celebrating India's win. Former women's world champion, the legendary Susan Polgar, says, "This team will stay on top for years to come, and India is now officially the best chess nation in the world." Others share her sentiment, like Hungarian Grandmaster Peter Leko. He says, "India is way too strong. They are very young, very determined, brilliantly prepared, and also have fantastic chemistry. So it's a very tough team for anyone to beat." India's chess superiority is like that of the legendary USSR teams back in the 1950s and 60s when the teams were sprouting one world champion after another, and they rarely lost a game. Gukesh and Erigesi could be the Karpov and Kasparov of the 2020s. After all, India is now a chess superpower, all thanks to the golden generation that's showcasing India's prowess. This has been the greatest chess year for the country. Apart from making history at the Olympiad, in April, 3 Indians made the cut for the Elite Candidates Tournament for the first time, besides 2 women competing in the Women's Candidates competition. Among these 5 players, Gukesh became the youngest ever to win the event. In June, apart from this, R. Praganananda took down world number 1 Magnus Carlsen for the first time in the classical format at the Norway Chess Tournament. Now, Gukesh could cap it off by becoming the youngest world champion in history. The world will be watching. But no matter the outcome, one thing is clear for all to see. India's chess reign has begun.
Everyone has a different coping mechanism. Some people like to exercise, some people write, and a lot of people joke. They try to see the funny side of a setback. Many Coldplay fans are doing that. We told you what happened over the weekend. Coldplay concert tickets sold out within minutes. Many fans had their laptops, phones and tablets out simultaneously. Rumor is they are still staring at the rejection page. And frankly, I'm impressed. I thought millennials couldn't pay attention to anything other than 1-minute reels. But here, they waited in queue despite being at number 400,000. That's full marks for dedication. Either way, some brave fans have moved on. Since they couldn't buy the tickets, they're joking about it. Take a look.
I mean, Coldplay is love. I'm a big Coldplay fan. Name any 2 members from Coldplay.
Chris Brown. Yeah, Chris Brown. That's all I know.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. A Russian Soyuz capsule landed in Kazakhstan, bringing 2 Russians and 1 American back to Earth. Residents paddled through flooded towns as Hungary deals with record floods, and the world's largest beer festival, the Oktoberfest, kicks off in Munich. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 1846, the planet Neptune was discovered. A German astronomer spotted it first. After observing its movements for 24 hours, it was confirmed that it was indeed a planet. The blue gas giant was named after the Roman god for sea. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.